tuning in and welcome to this week's review of Iron Man 2, starring Robert Downey Jr.
Showtime. There will be blood and laughter. And the sharks will come.
What I saw you do to Tony Stark on that track, wow. You need my resources.
I want to make Iron Man look like an antique.
This whole lone gunslinger act's unnecessary. You don't have to do this alone.
I hope you're ready.
Come on!
Mr. Stark displays textbook narcissism. Agreed?
Anyone that's seen my review of the first movie knows I liked it a lot, and it's one of my favorite films in this genre, along with The Dark Knight, Spider-Man 1 and 2, Kick-Ass, and the original Blade. Recently, some of the most hyped films with the biggest box office draws are films based off the Marvel and DC comic series. What has changed the most with this genre is that A-list actors and directors are at the helm of these new superhero mega productions. Once you have competent directors with a good script, great actors are sure to follow. While not every film gets it right like Wolverine, Ghost Rider, and the Fantastic Four, there are still some that do like Iron Man and The Dark Knight. As I said in my first review, I don't know if anyone could have captured Tony Stark the way Robert Downey Jr. did. He just has the right flair for this role.
We need to talk about your flair.
I don't really like talking about my flair.
Hey, look who's back. Table for three.
No, not that kind of flair. This kind. He just has the right blend of charisma and attitude to make you believe it. Robert Downey Jr. has overcome a lot in his personal life. While he's always been a very talented actor, he at times was his own worst enemy. But he started getting back on track with movies like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Zodiac, and Tropic Thunder. And now with the Iron Man series, he looks to cement his status as one of the top Hollywood stars in the business today. So needless to say, I was really looking forward to seeing what they'd be doing for the sequel. Personally, I would say the second film in a series like this is always the hardest one to do. For me, only Spider-Man 2 and The Dark Knight were able to pull off a second film that was as good as the first in this genre. The inevitable problem with a second film in a series is that most of the interesting aspects of the origin of the character have already been exhausted in the first film. The introduction of all the key players, the origin of the superhero and why he or she does it, these have already been explained already. And now this has already been established, you have to create an entire new film that is basically just a continuation of the first. This is not an easy task. Also, the first film in the series is fresh. It's the first time you're exposed to the cast and characters, so everything in it is new to you. And one of the other problems that plagues the sequels to films like this is the need for directors and studios to feel the need twice the explosions and twice the noise, to show how much bigger the sequel is than the original. This is always a huge mistake. What they need to do is keep the films consistent more than anything else, and don't go overboard. The good news is Iron Man 2 got more right than it did wrong. It was not as good as the first in the series, but it was still a fun movie to watch. And I don't think losing Terrence Howard hurt the film too much. They did get a competent Don Cheadle to fill in for him, so that change in casting really didn't bother me as much as it did some other people. Now, everyone was amped to see War Machine in action, but in all reality, the only thing to me he was really memorable of doing was firing off the most deadly weapon ever made. That's right, the ex-wife. Also, they did get Sam Rockwell, who's an amazing actor to play Justin Hammer. And while I enjoyed his performance, as always, I thought they should have made him a little more of a worthy adversary. They almost made him out to be a complete joke in the film, and the addition of Mickey Rourke was a solid choice for Whiplash. So let's take a look at what they got right. The cast has no real issues to speak of, and the action is one of the stronger aspects of the film, and the visuals are amazing. And they had a good soundtrack, so overall, I'd say it's a pretty good popcorn flick. Now, this is gonna sound funny, but the major problem I had with Iron Man 2 is it just didn't seem as realistic as the first film. I know some people are gonna find this comment absurd, considering that a flying war suit like Iron Man is about as unrealistic as it can get. But in the first film, they really did make it seem like something like this could be creative. All the environments in the first film were very realistic. The desert settings for the first half of the movie really helped sell the film as being rooted in present-day reality, regardless of the implausibility of creating a flying warsuit. The early part of the film was almost shot in a Rocky III sort of way. One is living the high life,
Excuse me, can I get a kiss?
Yes.
Get out of here!
and the other is in the gutter. And for Iron Man 2, outside of a few early scenes with Whiplash, are all way too glossy, and it's almost like a glamour shot version of the first film. They lost the raw feel the first one established so well, and most people watching the original obviously liked it, hence the great reviews and the overall box office take. The problem with the second film is that with all the drones and excessive use of clone suits, the effects were overdone. Having just two of them in the first one kept the film grounded. If they'd have stayed more in tune with the beginning of the film, whereas one-on-one, it would not have lost the feel of a true battle between Whiplash and Iron Man. While the original Iron Man's final battle was not the greatest ever, it did keep the battle on a personal level, where this one lost a lot of that, and sometimes too much of a good thing can hurt the movie, not help it. Also, I found the whole birthday party scenes extremely weak, the way the whole thing played out. It just seemed like a poor choice of direction when he finds out about the toxicity problems, and there's no way those scenes should have ever made the final cut that way. It was just too over the top. Now, it wasn't quite emo Spider-Man 3. A pretty poor attempt at some cheap jokes, and for me, it took away a lot of the grounded feel that the original created, and almost became cartoonish in nature. One thing that made him endearing in the first film was that he was growing a conscience. In Iron Man 2, that portion of his character seems all but lost, engulfed in his arrogance and depression. Also in the first film, Pepper Potts had some personality.
After all these years, Tony still has you picking up the dry cleaning.
I do anything and everything that Mr. Stark requires, including occasionally taking out the trash. Will that be all?
In this movie, she acts more like a pissed-off cyborg. She's nowhere near as likable in this film as she was in the original. One other issue is the pacing of the film. I definitely think the runtime on Iron Man 2 could have been trimmed down to tighten it up a bit. And some of the scenes were just a little too drawn out, and the pacing was off at times. And some of the dialogue was also less than stellar. And while some of this may sound harsh, it's only this harsh because of how good the original film was. The bar was set extremely high. And once this happens, we're going to expect the same quality, especially with the resources available to this film after the clear success of the original Iron Man. The ending of Iron Man 2 was somewhat of a disappointment. The final battle with Whiplash was just way too short. And it reminded me a little bit of the ending of the first Transformers, where there was a lot of action. But when it came time for Optimus Prime to battle with Megatron, it just fell flat. There was all this action leading up to it, and then when they finally crossed paths again, it was hardly one to write home about. And this was probably the most disappointing aspect of this film. While I did enjoy Iron Man 2 more than I didn't, unfortunately this film did not quite reach the level the first film attained, and in some ways set the series back a little. Also, if you want to wait 10 minutes for the credits to pass by, there's a small clip at the end, just like the first one. But to be honest, it was not worth the wait. Overall, I'd say that most people that are interested in seeing this film will have a pretty good time. You will get your money's worth. Just don't go in with the highest of expectations, because if you do, you may feel a little let down by this one. For my overall rating, I give Iron Man 2 3.5 stars.